Hi, this is Mike Hendrickson from Velocity Barcelona. I'm here with Monica Paul. Monica, how you doing?
Very good. Hola.
Yes, so you're the CMO for Aerospike.
That's right.
And you gave a talk this morning about the Impatience Economy.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about what that means and what it means specifically for developers?
Sure. So I use the term impatience economy because I'm an impatient person. I'm always late, I'm always behind, I'm always doing 10 things at the same time. I see my kids and they're doing the same thing. They've been brought up in this digital world where there's always a device out there and you know, if there's nothing to do, they're always on their phone. Even if there's something to do, if they're watching TV or, you know, hanging out with friends, or even when they're doing homework, they're on their phone. There's actually a new book out recently that talks about how this digital world is actually rewiring our brains. We're going from a time where we were a little bit more deliberate, we were more intellectual, if you will, you know, taking the time to think through things, weigh things, pros and cons, etc., to a more instinctive world where people are basically sensing and responding instinctively. So that's why colors are more important, images, video, looking at what other people are doing, following the herd, if you will, following the crowd, taking the easy way out, doing things that are simple likes and follows and clicks rather than taking the time to write something out. So this is the kind of, you know, switch that's happening with kids today, with the world today, with, you know, people today. And I think for a developer, there's a couple of things. So on one hand, the front-end developers, the developers who are actually building the sites that engage consumers, if you will, need to both allow them to do things like searching and sorting and find what they're looking for, but also they need to start, you know, thinking a little bit more about how do you predict what this person is going to want. How are you going to discover more about this person, know more about that person, and therefore delight them, present them with something before they're even thinking that that's what they want.
And so in that delighting them, you know, someone really has to make a choice, or a technology has to go through a decision tree to what they're going to give that person as their choice. So that has to happen pretty quickly.
Absolutely. I think, you know, developers, especially those building websites, have always known that velocity is important, that if you slow down the load times of pages, or if you take, you know, if you delay, you've lost that user. But I think in this day and age, we have to take it to the next level. We have to know more about the user. We have to be processing more big data, right? What that user's done before on the website, what that user has done on other websites, how that user compares to other audiences, and use that information to really personalize the experience even better.
So that's why I always think these ads are following me around the web, like Nordstrom and Betabrand and Gilt. They seem to follow me around the web, but they're not following me. When I go to a website, someone's making a decision in this instant, and they're loading those ads, or they're brokering and bidding for those ads?
Absolutely, absolutely. So, you know, in the past, you know, we used to read newspapers, and there was television and radio. People actually watched television, actually listened to the radio. And if you remember, that traditional media was funded by advertising. New media today, social media, you know, your Twitter feed, Snapchat, all of these mobile apps, basically they too are funded by advertising. And what these advertisers are wanting to do is basically put a message in front of you that's relevant, that's appropriate, that's timely, something that is actually helpful. Because, you know, if you don't click, if you don't find that message interesting, they're not going to make money, and, you know, you're not going to be happy.
They still have to get a little smarter, because I also get put a lot of O'Reilly ads for me, and obviously I'm not purchasing O'Reilly.
It's very early days. They absolutely have to get much, much smarter. But there is actually a new ecosystem that's developing around something called a new technology called real-time bidding, where there are companies that are actually tracking your clicks across the internet, and therefore knowing more, a little bit more about the device ID that you're using or the cookie that you have in your browser, so that they can try to serve you with things that are more relevant.
Okay, so on the scale of creepy to cool, where does this sort of technology fit? It's somewhere in there.
You know, technology is technology. It enables certain things. it's up to us as a civil society to decide where the lines are. You know, what's appropriate and what's not. How you can protect people, how you can give people rights to, opt in or not, etc. So I'm not going to debate about the merits of good and bad, because the same technology can be used for good and bad, quote unquote, good and bad. But having said that, in this day and age, we have a lot of free services on the internet. Those services are paid for by advertising. And think about, today it's digital advertising, but one thing that I want to point out is this infrastructure, this real-time bidding infrastructure, where people are actually bidding for the right to put a message in front of you. And all of this has to happen from the time you click on a page and the page appears, so in milliseconds, in 100 milliseconds or less. This technology is actually enabling people, companies, businesses, if you will, to essentially personalize your internet experience for you.
So, and it also could lead to more things, more than just advertising. It could, a medical institution could be alerting people.
Exactly right. This has been pioneered by people in digital advertising, but it's the same technology for cross-channel marketing, if you will. It's also the same technology for detecting, disease outbreaks, etc., and therefore alerting people, for safety. Absolutely.
Yeah. So you also talked about scale and the ability for companies to scale, but there's a different kind of scaling. You mentioned in-memory scale. Can you explain that a little bit more?
Sure. So, when we talk about velocity in the old days, it used to be about a single website and how fast can you load a page and deliver a user experience. But there's a new kind of scale emerging. With these real-time bidding companies, what they're doing is basically scaling the entire internet. So they are understanding what is happening on the internet, and they are understanding, when someone appears on a website or a mobile app, and they're essentially personalizing the message for that person in milliseconds. So typically in this ecosystem, each player has maybe 5 to 10 milliseconds in which to make a decision. So they're typically, processing big data, making it close by readily available, such that when somebody appears, they know what to do right there and then.
And so we're going to have a ton of data, and we're going to be going through it to serve the right ads to the right people. How does someone do that without having to have 1 million machines to store all the data?
Technology is always evolving. The good news is that even in storage technologies, we now have flash solid-state drives. Companies like Aerospike, what we've done is we've actually built our own proprietary file system that goes directly to these solid-state drives, to these flash drives. We use a hybrid approach, a combination of indexes in RAM and data on flash, so that you get close to the speed of RAM, but you're paying for flash. And so you are able to scale up on fewer machines at lower price points than before.
And now, which parts of your technologies you open source as well?
Aerospike is open source, absolutely. So most of the functionality is, part of our community edition. The only piece that is part of the enterprise edition is, first of all, it's the tested, validated, verified builds, if you will. But more than that, it's our cross data center replication support. So as you scale up and you want to support multiple data centers and you want replication across those data centers, that is part of our enterprise edition.
Okay. So Monica, if we have this conversation 12 months from now, what will have changed for Aerospike, and what do you think will be the biggest change in the industry?
For Aerospike, I think we have the fastest database on the planet. I like to say, close to the speed of Redis and the scale of Cassandra. So you've got your speed at scale happening. We started off as a very, very fast key value store. Then we added support for secondary indexes, user-defined functions. I think over the next year, you're simply going to see more and more rich APIs, if you will, so that you can do more powerful things with the database. And for the industry, I think there's no stopping speed at scale. Data is not slowing down. The amount of data is not slowing down. The number of people online is not slowing down. Number of devices out there. And then, this is the Internet of people. And remember, the Internet of Things is imminent and happening. Yeah. And that's going to take us to yet another different level of scale as well.
Great. We'll look forward to that discussion in a year. Thank you.